What would you do if you found out your drink had been spiked by a wealthy predator, but the person who ultimately saved you was even more dangerous? Today, I want to share the remarkable true story of Jessica Torres, a single mother juggling multiple jobs to support her 5-year-old daughter. She thought she was simply serving at another upscale event, unaware that Lorenzo De Luca, a 40-year-old Italian mafia boss, was watching from across the room. When he caught sight of something that made his blood run cold, Lorenzo moved with deadly precision, approached Jessica, and whispered 2 words that would save her life and alter everything. Stay silent. What happened next involved predators dressed in expensive suits, a protective Italian patriarch bound by old-world honor codes, and a love story that proved sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is exactly the one you need. Jessica carefully balanced the silver tray as she weaved through the crowd of affluent guests at Romano's, the most exclusive Italian restaurant in Manhattan. At 29, she had mastered the art of invisible service being, present enough to anticipate needs, yet discreet enough to avoid drawing unwanted attention from men who believed their wealth entitled them to more than just dinner. Tonight's private event was precisely the kind of lucrative gig Jessica craved. The catering company had specifically requested her because she was professional, experienced, and willing to work late hours that others shunned. With her daughter Emma asleep at her neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment, Jessica could focus solely on earning enough to pay her rent by tomorrow. The event was in celebration of Blackstone Capital, a private equity firm known for closing billion-dollar deals and hosting parties that cost more than most people's yearly salaries. The guests were exactly what Jessica expected. Older men in custom suits discussing high-stakes transactions over wines that cost more per bottle than Jessica earned in a week, accompanied by young women laughing at jokes that weren't funny and nodding along to opinions they secretly questioned. Jessica had been working these kinds of events for 3 years, ever since Emma's father, David, decided fatherhood was too restrictive and vanished to find himself in Europe with his yoga instructor. The work was draining and sometimes humiliating, but it paid well enough to keep Jessica and Emma in their modest, tidy apartment in Queens. As she refilled champagne glasses and cleared empty plates, Jessica pushed thoughts of overdue electricity bills and Emma's need for new shoes before school resumed next month out of her mind. Instead, she focused on the generous tips and overtime that would help her catch up on expenses. "Miss, could I get another martini?" Jessica turned and spotted Richard Blackstone himself, the 60-something CEO of Blackstone Capital, whose company was hosting the evening. His appearance was polished to perfection, the kind that expensive healthcare and personal trainers could produce. Silver hair, a confident smile born from never hearing no, and a demeanor that made Jessica instantly aware of his authority. "Of course, Mr. Blackstone. Vodka martini, extra dry, 3 olives," she replied professionally, noting his approving grin. Blackstone's smile was warm, but there was something about his gaze that made Jessica uneasy. "You're not like the usual servers they send," he said, voice smooth. "You're special." Jessica forced a polite smile. "Thank you, sir. I'll get that right away." As she headed toward the bar, she felt Blackstone's eyes linger. It wasn't unusual for wealthy men to treat servers as decoration, making offhand remarks or assumptions she'd learned to ignore. But this time, something about his attention felt different, enough to make her skin crawl. At the bar, Marco, a young Italian bartender who had been friendly throughout the evening, prepared Blackstone's drink with practiced efficiency. "Be careful with that one," Marco said softly, handing Jessica the martini. "I've worked quite a few of Blackstone's events. He's got a reputation, and not a good one. Rumors say young women who work his parties sometimes wake up with no memory of how they got home." A shiver ran down Jessica's spine. She'd heard whispers about certain wealthy clients, rumors among staff about men who believed money was a blank check for anything, but she'd never encountered such danger firsthand. "Thanks for the warning," she murmured, taking the drink. As she returned to Blackstone's table, Jessica became aware of another figure in the room, someone she'd unconsciously avoided all evening. Sitting in a corner at a commanding table sat Lorenzo, a man who exuded a different kind of power. Probably in his early 40s, he carried himself with a quiet majesty that made people instinctively step aside. His dark hair, styled perfectly with a touch of silver at the temples, complemented olive-toned skin suggesting Mediterranean origins. His tailored charcoal suit fit so impeccably it appeared painted on. What had caught Jessica's attention earlier were his eyes dark brown, almost black, with an intensity that suggested he saw everything, revealing nothing. Unlike the other guests, Lorenzo ate with genuine appreciation, spoke courteously to the staff, and moved with the quiet confidence of a man who needed no theatrics to command respect. Even the restaurant's management treated him differently. Jessica approached Blackstone's table, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. Lorenzo watching her, his expression mild but alert, as if reading her very soul. "Here you go, Mr. Blackstone," Jessica said softly, setting down the martini. "Excellent. You know, I've been thinking. You're clearly too sharp to just be a waitress. Have you considered other opportunities?" Blackstone asked, eyes gleaming. "I'm quite happy with my current work," Jessica replied cautiously. "Are you sure? Because I could offer you something far more lucrative, something that could set you up for life," he said smoothly. The word lucrative made Jessica's stomach tighten, reminding her of countless stories she'd heard of women tempted by wealth, only to regret it later. "That's very kind, but I prefer to stay focused on my job," she answered, trying to keep her tone steady. Blackstone's warm smile persisted, but a cold flicker flashed in his eyes. "Think about it. I'll be here for another hour. No rush." Jessica nodded and turned to leave. But Blackstone gently, almost too gently, grasped her wrist, a gesture that seemed friendly but felt controlling. "Actually, take a quick break. You look exhausted. Have a drink with me," he said softly. Before she could object, he subtly signaled Marco, the bartender. "A champagne for the lady, the Dom Perignon," Blackstone ordered with a flourish. Jessica hesitated. "That's not necessary." "I insist," Blackstone interrupted, his tone firm but charming. "You've been working so hard tonight. The least I can do is offer you something special." Jessica felt trapped. Refusing the host's gesture could jeopardize her job and prospects with the catering company, but accepting felt like crossing a line she didn't want to cross. "Very generous," she said carefully, "but I'm still on duty." "Just one glass. I promise it will be worth your while." Marco appeared with a bottle of Dom Perignon, delicately pouring it into a flute that probably cost more than Jessica's weekly grocery budget. She saw in his eyes a silent warning, but refusing would risk making a scene. "Thank you," Jessica murmured as she took the glass, though she didn't drink. She lifted it slightly in a polite toast. "To new opportunities," she whispered. Just then, a voice interrupted her, a deep, accented tone with an unmistakable authority. "Don't talk." Jessica froze. Turning, she saw Lorenzo standing behind her, his dark eyes fixed on something that made his jaw tighten with restraint. His voice, calm but commanding, repeated, "Don't drink, and don't say anything until I tell you." Following his gaze, Jessica saw what had caught Lorenzo's attention. Blackstone's face had paled, twisted with genuine fear. "Mr. I. Santangelo," Blackstone stammered, voice lacking its usual confidence. "I wasn't expecting to see you tonight." Lorenzo's reply was sharp, laced with menace. "Clearly," he said coldly. "Jessica Caramia, step back from the table." Jessica didn't know Lorenzo or why Blackstone was terrified of him, but every instinct told her to obey. She slowly stepped back, clutching the champagne flute. Lorenzo then reached for a cloth napkin, gently taking the glass from her hand. He dipped the corner of the napkin into the champagne and held it up to the light, his expression calm as he examined it. "Rohypnol," Lorenzo said conversationally, "also known as roofy colorless, odorless, and undetectable unless you know what to look for." Jessica's blood ran cold. The champagne. Blackstone had insisted she drink it. She remembered his upset reaction when she hesitated, how he urged her to accept. Her mind flooded with images of the hidden danger that had been so subtly planted right before her eyes. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting," Blackstone began. "I'm not suggesting anything," Lorenzo cut him off, his tone growing colder. "I'm stating facts. You drugged this woman's drink intending to incapacitate her so you could assault her. I saw you slip the powder into her glass while Marco was distracted. Jessica felt the room spinning around her. She had been seconds away from drinking that champagne, seconds from becoming yet another victim of a predator who exploited his wealth and position to prey on vulnerable women. That's a serious accusation, Blackstone said, his voice trembling, but you can't prove anything. Lorenzo pulled out his phone and showed Blackstone the screen. Security footage. It's incredible what surveillance cameras can capture. No, especially when you know which angles to watch and which footage to preserve. The color drained from Blackstone's face as he realized Lorenzo's phone displayed undeniable video evidence of him drugging Jessica's drink. Lorenzo's voice stayed steady, chilling, yet controlled. You will leave this restaurant immediately. You will close your account here and never return. You will cancel all upcoming events your company has planned at any establishment I have an interest in. You cannot dictate terms. He paused before continuing. And within the next hour, you will transfer $50,000 to a charity that aids victims of sexual assault. Lorenzo's smile was cold and frightening, but his expression was one of unwavering authority. That's justice, Mr. Blackstone. Or, if you prefer, we can escalate this, discuss it with some of my less diplomatic associates. Blackstone looked around the restaurant, desperately seeking support, but the other patrons avoided eye contact with evident caution. Whatever power Lorenzo commanded, it was formidable enough that no one dared challenge him. At last, Blackstone muttered, "Fine. This isn't over." Lorenzo's reply was simple. "Yes, it is. Because if you ever approach this woman again, if you harm another woman in my city, or if I even hear your name linked to such behavior, you'll find that some consequences money can't buy." Without another word, Blackstone gathered his belongings and left, flanked by several associates who clearly wanted to distance themselves from what had just happened. The moment they were gone, Lorenzo turned to Jessica, his face softening from menace into concern. "Are you all right, Karamia?" Jessica stared at him, struggling to process what had just unfolded. You saved me." "I couldn't stand by and watch a predator drug an innocent woman," Lorenzo replied. "But how did you see what he was doing? How did you know?" His smile grew roguish. "In my line of work, you learn to watch for certain behaviors. Men like Blackstone think they're invisible because of their money and status. But I've been watching predators for many years." Jessica realized she was trembling, the weight of what she'd nearly endured crashing down on her all at once. "I could have been hurt if you hadn't been there," she whispered, "but I am safe now." She looked at Lorenzo more intently, trying to understand the man who had stepped in to protect her, his expensive suit, the way staff treated him with deference, the palpable fear he had inspired in Blackstone. It all suggested someone with powerful influence. "Who are you?" she asked directly. Lorenzo examined her for a moment. "I am someone who believes women should be protected, not preyed upon. Someone who thinks wealth and power should serve to help people, not harm them." It wasn't an outright answer, but they both knew it was revealing enough. "Jessica?" Lorenzo continued softly. "That's what Blackstone called you." "Yes, Jessica Parker." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Jessica Parker, even under these circumstances. I am Lorenzo Santangelo." The name meant little to Jessica, but she caught the significance in the discreet glances from the staff nearby, who clearly recognized it. "Mr. Santangelo, I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Lorenzo replied smoothly. "But I do have a question, if you don't mind." "Of course." "Do you often work events like this, private gatherings, wealthy clients, late hours?" Jessica suddenly felt self-conscious. "When I can get them, the pay is good, and I have responsibilities." "Children," Lorenzo prompted gently. She nodded. "A daughter, Emma. She's 5. A flicker of understanding, or was it pity, crossed Lorenzo's face, as if her circumstances had illuminated something important for him. "And you work alone at these events? No security, no protection?" Jessica hesitated. "The catering company provides some basic security, but—" She trailed off, realizing how fragile that protection turned out to be. "Jessica, what happened tonight wasn't random," Lorenzo said softly. Men like Blackstone target women they see as vulnerable, women working alone late at night, women who can't afford to complain for fear it'll cost them their jobs. Vulnerable women, like you, who are unlikely to report or fight back effectively. His words hit her like a punch. She had been deliberately targeted, calculatedly seen as an easy mark, someone unlikely to fight back. "I need this job," she said quietly. "I can't afford to avoid these events." "No, you can't," Lorenzo agreed. "But you also can't go into them without protection." He paused to weigh his words. "I have a proposition for you, if you're willing." Jessica's stomach twisted. Men who made propositions after rescuing women from predators were rarely offering anything innocent. "What kind of proposition?" she asked cautiously. "I own several legitimate businesses here, restaurants, event planning, hospitality services. I'm always looking for reliable staff who can handle high-end clients. You're offering me a job," she said slowly. "I'm offering you employment that pays well, offers security, and means you'll never have to worry about men like Blackstone again." She looked at him, suspicion bubbling up. "Why would you do that for a stranger you just met?" Lorenzo nodded approvingly. "Good question. You should never trust offers that seem too good to be true, especially from someone you don't know." He pulled out his phone and showed her a website. "This is Sant'Angelo Hospitality. Do some research, look at reviews, check references, speak to current employees. I'm not asking for blind trust. Just for you to investigate and decide for yourself." She examined the professional site, noting the addresses of high-end venues throughout the city. "Take the weekend to think about it," Lorenzo said. "If you're interested, call the number listed and ask for Maria Sant'Angelo. She manages HR and can answer any questions." He handed her a business card, then reached inside his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is your pay for tonight, plus a bonus for what you've been through. Consider it compensation for Blackstone's misconduct." Jessica hesitated as she opened it and gasped more money than she'd normally make in 2 months. "I can't accept this," she said. "Yes, you can and you should," Lorenzo replied firmly. "You have a daughter to take care of, and that's more important than pride." His tone was matter-of-fact, a quiet acknowledgement of her financial struggles. "Mr. Sant'Angelo, I don't understand why you're being so generous to a stranger," she whispered. His expression grew distant for a moment, as if recalling a painful memory. "When I was young, my mother worked multiple jobs after my father died. She was beautiful but desperate, vulnerable to men who saw her as an opportunity. She wasn't always as fortunate as you were tonight." The weight of his words carried a heavy sting. Jessica felt a pang of compassion and sorrow. "It's not charity," Lorenzo said softly. "It's responsibility." He straightened his jacket with that practiced grace. "Think about the offer, Jessica, and in the meantime, be cautious at your events. Men like Blackstone aren't rare in these circles." As he turned to leave, a sudden impulse made her call out, "Wait, how do I know you're not too good to be true?" Lorenzo offered her a smile, one that reached his eyes for the first time. "You don't. But tomorrow, call Maria. Ask her about the other women working for us. Mothers, sisters. Ask about their safety, their experiences, then decide." With that, he vanished into the night, leaving Jessica alone amid the quiet hum of the restaurant. She sat there for a long moment, replaying the evening's events over and over in her mind. She had narrowly escaped an assault by a man who believed his wealth entitled him to her body, only to be rescued later by a powerful figure who seemed genuinely committed to helping her forge a better life. The following morning, Jessica sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, researching everything she could find about the man Lorenzo Sant'Angelo and his business empire. What she uncovered was both captivating and somewhat unsettling. Sant'Angelo Hospitality was undeniably legitimate, boasting glowing reviews and numerous successful ventures. Lorenzo himself appeared frequently in business publications, praised as a savvy entrepreneur involved in restaurants, property development, and event management. Yet beneath the surface, there were subtle hints of something darker. Mentions of old-school business practices and traditional family values, suggested ties beyond typical corporate dealings. Jessica dialed the number on the business card and requested to speak with Maria Santangelo. "You must be Jessica," Maria replied warmly when she answered. "Lorenzo told me you might call. He mentioned you had a difficult night." "Yes, that's right. He offered me a job, but I wanted to learn more about the company before deciding." "Of course. Why don't you come by this afternoon? I can show you around our main restaurant and introduce you to some of our staff. Many of them are women whose situations are similar to yours." That afternoon, Jessica took Emma to the playground before heading to Little Italy for her meeting with Maria Santangelo. The neighborhood was unlike any Jessica had known older, more rooted in tradition, full of family-run eateries and shops that looked as if they had been there for generations. Santangelo's was housed in a historic building that had evidently been meticulously restored with care and considerable expense. The restaurant exuded elegance, yet retained a welcoming warmth that hinted at genuine hospitality rather than superficial showmanship. Maria Santangelo, in her mid-30s, with dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes resembling her brother's, radiated a comforting warmth that immediately put Jessica at ease. She greeted Jessica like an old friend and introduced her to several staff members eager to share their experiences working for the Santangelo family. "I was a single mother, juggling 3 catering jobs when Lorenzo hired me," explained Carmen, a woman around Jessica's age who now managed events at the restaurant. "I was exhausted, struggling to pay rent, always worried about my son's safety when working late shifts. Now I have regular hours, decent pay, health coverage, and I don't have to worry about inappropriate behavior from clients." Jessica asked, "How does he make sure of that?" Rosa, another staff member, chimed in. "By making it clear his employees are under his protection, word travels fast in certain circles. When people know you work for Lorenzo Santangelo, they treat you with respect." "What does that mean exactly?" Jessica pressed. Maria stepped in. "My brother wields significant influence in the city's business scene. Those who mistreat his staff often find that their relationships, even business ones, become complicated." Jessica sensed there was more beneath the surface, yet every woman she spoke with appeared genuinely content, confident, and well cared for. Whatever Lorenzo's methods, they seemed effective at safeguarding his people. As their tour wound down, Maria said, "Jessica, I want to be honest about my brother. He's a good man who looks after those who work for him, but his business dealings go beyond typical corporate norms. Some might see that as a concern." "Are you saying he's involved in illegal activities?" Jessica asked cautiously. "I'm saying he operates according to principles that prioritize loyalty, family, and community above strict legality. Whether that's something you're comfortable with is up to you." That evening, Jessica returned home with plenty to ponder. The job offer checked every box: good pay, stable hours, safety, benefits, and a chance for career growth. Yet, accepting it meant working for a man whose influence extended into realms she didn't fully understand. As she tucked Emma into bed that night, her daughter looked up and asked, "Mommy, why do you look worried?" "I'm thinking about a new job, sweetheart. It would be good for us, but it's a big decision. Would we have more money?" "Yes, we would. And would you be home more?" "I think so." Emma's simple logic pierced through Jessica's complex worries. She needed steady employment, decent pay, and security. Lorenzo was offering all of that, and the reasons behind his generosity, whatever they might be, mattered less than the tangible results. The next morning, Jessica called Maria and accepted the position. Her first day at Santangelo's was unlike any previous work experience. Maria spent hours teaching her the company's systems and standards, introducing her to vendors and clients, and explaining their philosophy of service. "We treat every event as if it's for our own family," Maria said. "That means attention to detail, authentic hospitality, and complete discretion." "Discretion?" Jessica echoed. Maria nodded. "Many of our clients value privacy. They trust us to deliver excellent service without gossip or media exposure about their personal lives." Jessica soon discovered that Santangelo's clientele included politicians, celebrities, and business moguls people who preferred to keep their private affairs away from prying eyes. The work was demanding, requiring a level of sophistication she had yet to develop in previous jobs, but it was also fascinating and well compensated. More importantly, she felt safer and respected more than she ever had before. Lorenzo's influence was subtle but unmistakable. Staff treated each other with courtesy, and there were no inappropriate advances or uncomfortable situations. Everyone understood that Santangelo's employees were protected, not to be exploited. After 3 weeks working at the restaurant, Jessica had her first real conversation with Lorenzo since the night he had rescued her. He appeared during a hectic dinner shift, moving through the dining room with a natural authority that made staff straighten their posture and patrons nod in respect. Approaching her station near the private dining rooms, he asked, "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you. Maria's been incredible, and the work is exactly what I hoped." She hesitated before adding, "And Emma? She's adjusting well to our new schedule." Lorenzo's piercing gaze lingered, and Jessica was surprised he remembered her daughter's name. "Yes, she loves that I'm home for dinner most nights now," Jessica continued. "Good," he said softly. Children need their mother's presence, not constantly worrying about money or safety. Something in his tone hinted at personal experience. Jessica remembered his story about his mother's struggles. "Mr. Santangelo Lorenzo, I wanted to thank you again for what you did that night, and for this opportunity. It's truly changed our lives." His face softened. "You deserve stability, Jessica. You work hard. You care for your daughter. And you treat people kindly. Those qualities should be rewarded, not exploited." Jessica hesitated. "Why did you help me? I mean, the real reason." Lorenzo considered her, then spoke thoughtfully. "When I saw what Blackstone was doing to you, I remembered my mother, beautiful, hard-working, preyed upon by a man who believed his wealth entitled him to anything he wanted. She survived, but barely. And she spent the rest of her life teaching my sister and me the difference between protecting power and exploiting it." Jessica looked at him, seeing pain and resolve in equal measure. "Is that why you do what you do? To protect people?" "Partly," Lorenzo admitted. "My family's resources, influence, and connections can make life better or worse for community members. I choose to use those assets to shield rather than prey, even when it's dangerous. All worthwhile endeavors are risky," he added softly. "The question is whether those risks serve a greater good." Over the months that followed, Jessica's life improved beyond her expectations. Her job at Santangelo's was demanding yet fulfilling, utilizing the skills she'd cultivated and picking up new ones. Her finances stabilized, allowing her to move into a safer, better neighborhood. Emma blossomed in a school that had resources for its students. More than anything, Jessica felt she finally belonged, something she hadn't experienced since her partner left. The Santangelo family's businesses were more than workplaces. They were family-run operations where employees were treated like kin, where personal struggles were addressed collectively, and success and hardship were shared openly. Jessica also found herself developing feelings for Lorenzo that transcended gratitude or professional respect. He was unlike any man she had ever encountered, powerful yet gentle, commanding yet respectful, dangerous but protective. When he visited the restaurant, he always asked about Emma, about Jessica's aspirations, and offered advice or help without condescension. Their chemistry was undeniable. Jessica caught him watching her with an intensity that suggested more than business, and their conversations gradually grew more personal, more intimate, charged with unspoken possibilities. The turning point came one Friday evening when Jessica worked late to coordinate a weekend wedding reception. Most of the staff had already left for the evening, leaving Jessica alone in the restaurant as she reviewed the final details for tomorrow's event. The quiet was broken when she heard someone enter through the private door Lorenzo used. Jessica looked up to see him approaching, concern etched on his face. "Jessica, you really shouldn't be here so late by yourself," he said softly. She nodded, understanding the worry in his eyes. "I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect for tomorrow. It's the first wedding I've coordinated entirely on my own, and I truly believe it will be beautiful." Lorenzo's gaze softened. "It's past 10. And you have a daughter waiting at home, he reminded her. She smiled gently. Emma's having a sleepover at a friend's tonight. I figured I'd catch up on work while she's gone. Lorenzo studied her in the dim restaurant lighting before speaking again. You work too hard, Karamia. That's coming from someone who owns multiple businesses and probably works 18 hours a day. She shook her head. That's different. I don't have a small child depending on me. He paused, a faint smile playing on his lips. No, but you have dozens of employees counting on you, hundreds of people who rely on your protection and support. Jessica met his gaze, touched by his words. Lorenzo chuckled softly. You see too much, Jessica Parker. She returned his smile, a flicker of warmth passing between them. I see a man who carries more responsibility than anyone should have to bear alone. They stood in silence, the empty restaurant filled with unspoken feelings and the silent tension of months of growing attraction. Lorenzo broke the quiet. Jessica, there are things about my life, my business, my responsibilities that make relationships complicated. She nodded. I know. He hesitated. Do you truly understand what it means to care for someone in my position? She set aside her planning materials and moved closer to him. I understand that you saved my life. I understand you've given me and Emma security we never had before. And I understand that you're the first man who makes me feel both safe and alive at the same time. His dark eyes searched her face. And what about the danger, the moral complications, the fact that my world operates by rules most find unacceptable? Jessica looked away briefly, recalling the nights she'd watched him confront Blackstone, the terror in the gangster's eyes, the immediate retreat, the mystery of what he truly did. I'm grateful, she admitted softly. Someone's willing to make those choices, use those methods to keep people like me and Emma safe. Lorenzo gently cupped her face in his hands, his touch tender despite the calluses that betrayed a life more physical than his polished facade suggested. You could have any man, Jessica, he whispered, someone safe, conventional, clean. She shook her head. I don't want any man, I want you. When Lorenzo kissed her, it was with a passion that had been simmering for months, an intensity that went beyond simple attraction to something deeper, more profound. Jessica felt completely at home, finally finding her place in his arms. 6 months later, Jessica moved into Lorenzo's penthouse apartment with Emma, who had been instantly charmed by the man she called Mr. Lorenzo, enchanted by his promises to teach her to cook authentic Italian dishes. Their home was transformed, the refrigerator covered in children's drawings, toys scattered in the living room, the joyful sounds of a family where only elegance and solitude had once been. Jessica had learned more about Lorenzo's business dealings, understanding that his influence extended into areas not always legal, but always aimed at protecting and uplifting his community. She had met other families connected to the Sant'Angelo organization, witnessing the network of loyalty and mutual support that formed the backbone of Lorenzo's world. Most importantly, she watched how Lorenzo interacted with Emma, patient, gentle, genuinely interested in her dreams and thoughts. He attended school events, helped with homework, and treated Jessica's daughter with respect and affection, seeing her as family rather than an accessory. Do you ever regret it? Lorenzo asked one evening, both standing on their balcony as Emma played in the secured garden below, Maria supervising. She looked at him, a man who had saved her from assault, given her purpose, provided safety for her child, and loved them both with unwavering devotion. Regret what? She asked softly. Choosing this life, choosing me, with all the complications involved. Jessica's gaze lingered on him, a man who had offered her so much protection, purpose, love. I regret it took me so long to find you, she said simply. Lorenzo pulled her closer, wrapping his strong arms around her. Ti amo, Jessica Parker, he whispered. You and Emma are my heart. Jessica smiled, proud of the Italian phrases Maria had been teaching her. Tamu, Anio, she replied, feeling more rooted than ever. As they watched Emma play safely in their garden, Jessica remembered that night at Romano's when she'd been seconds from drinking poisoned champagne. She'd thought she was simply working another catering gig, earning money for rent and groceries. Instead, she had found a protector, a partner, a father figure for Emma, and a love stronger than any peril they could face. That's the story of Jessica Parker, an ordinary single mother saved by 2 words from an Italian mafia boss who saw her vulnerability and chose to intervene. Her tale proves that protection can come from unexpected quarters, that love can blossom under the most unlikely circumstances, and that sometimes the most dangerous man is exactly the hero you need. Lorenzo and Jessica's love story reminds us that strength manifests in many forms, that family can be chosen as well as born, and that true love is rooted in respect, protection, and partnership, never control or possession. If this incredible story touched you and you want to hear more tales of unexpected protection, dangerous romance, and love that conquers all, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Each week we share stories about real people discovering that heroes come in many shapes, and that sometimes the most perilous moments lead to the most profound love. What did you think of Jessica and Lorenzo's story? Have you ever been in a situation where a stranger stepped in to protect you? Would you have accepted Lorenzo's offer? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories resonate with your own experiences of unexpected kindness, protection, and love. Remember, sometimes the person who saves you isn't who you expect, and the most dangerous choice might lead to the safest love. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.